Hey, what's going on? It's Tommy, and I am recording now part 7 of the Magic Ladder to Success. Um, Magic Ladder to Success by Napoleon Hill. And this is going to be actually part 6 of Lesson 1, which is the first chapter. And Lesson 1 is the Mastermind. And it's the longest chapter. There's a lot of depth to it. I'm going to mention beforehand the topics that they're titled as, and then I'll explain a little bit about that, my thoughts on it. But ultimately, this book is, I believe, the first book from all the research that I've found. There is potentially another book that wasn't necessarily a book, but it was like a course guide, and this was also used as a course guide, but it was the first book, The Magic Ladder to Success. And it's simple, and the whole intention of the book is basically with what you receive, right, through reading it. Basically, yeah, the intention is to get better ideas on the projects and good goals that you're striving towards. And at least that's the way that I receive it from the intro, and you can look at the intro, audio chapter I put in. It kind of says that, and you get it at the end of the book as well. It basically says, now take action with what you've received, because my main intention here in this mastermind, where I am in the past, have recorded this, and you are there where you are listening to it now, that we are somehow still connected in mind in this mastermind, and I wish you the best intention for you to receive well with this, so that it gets you good ideas to move you further along in the projects that you are working on. The best way, the one that is best for all, and I appreciate you that way. So what he says before, right at the beginning, the very intro before the first chapter, is do not read this book without a pen or paper, right? I'll say. He says pencil and a paper. And by that I mean that if you need to, give it a pause, write something down, take a little journal. Sometimes we're called to journal, and we should. And it's mostly just important because if you have this good idea, it might just peace out like 30 seconds or 2 minutes later, because that's how the mind and the memory work, right? So stay focused on it, write it down, pause this, write it down, or just during it, make some notes in a journal. And it's quite an old book. Sometimes terminology is different, and with this one specifically, sex is in the title several times. Sex. But I think when he says sex, we should look at it as like sex energy. And if you've ever looked into Kundalini energy or the Kundalini, and of course just kind of like ancient Vedic principles and things like this, and different breath works call for flexing your like lower energy muscles and bringing an energy up. I feel that there is correlation to that, and we should look at what he says specifically and think about the Kundalini and that sexual energy. So I'm going to read these titles that we're going to read. It's about 7 pages, so I presume this will be a half an hour. The relationship between sex and genius is the first one, and you know what? We'll just go right into it. So that's the first one, the relationship between sex and genius. If you come up with a good idea, give it a pause, write it down on your notebook, and come on through. Keep going. The relationship between sex and genius. The sex drive is by far the most powerful of the 8 basic motivating forces that stimulate the mind to action. Because of the importance of this, also one more thing. This is on a playlist, so you got the whole thing. If you search the playlist of this, or go straight to my page, you should be able to find the playlist there. So it's got all the parts. Because oftentimes, what I promise you'll learn from this, you might, but also you'll be like, hey, what was before? What's next? So yeah, just subscribe, and you'll get the next one tomorrow if you don't already have it. The sex drive is by far the most powerful of the 8 basic motivating forces that stimulate the mind to action. Because of the importance of this subject, it has been reserved as the closing chapter of the first of the 17 factors constituting the law of success. The part that sexual urge plays in the achievement of outstanding sources was first discovered by the author in his studies of the biographies of great leaders and in his analysis of men and women of the present age who have risen high in their chosen fields of endeavor. And also, I was having a conversation a little bit. It keeps talking about the mastermind, the main thing being harmony. So I find that often you just gotta allow to connect with the frequency of what the author is writing. Because I just, had some we were chatting a conversation. People were on like slightly different topics, right? So if you're out of harmony, you might not necessarily receive the way the author is putting it down. The part that sexual urge plays in the achievement of outstanding success was first discovered by the author in his studies of the biographies of great leaders and in his analysis of men and women of the present age who have risen high in their chosen fields of endeavor. Most people are unpardonably ignorant when it comes to the subject of sex. It's no wonder, since sexual desire has been slandered and burlesqued by the ignorant and the vulgar for so long. Men and women who are known to be blessed with highly sexed natures are often looked upon with suspicion, though it's often secretly accompanied by envy. During the early years of research, when this philosophy was in the embryonic stage, the author made the discovery that every great leader in art and music, in literature and statesmanship, and in practically every other walk, I should say, of life, was a highly sexed person. Among the group whose biographies were carefully studied, let us list the following as members of that group. Also, sex, I feel, is just creative energy, so sometimes highly creative. And yeah, maybe they were highly sexed and highly creative, but sometimes I feel these words can just be used interchangeably. We could have a conversation on that if you disagree. And these are the list of the following members: Napoleon Bonaparte, Shakespeare, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Robert Burns, Thomas Jefferson, Oscar Wilde, Woodrow Wilson, Stanford White, Enrico Caruso. Very possible those were both creative and sexed. The sexual urge is the highest and most refined form of human emotion. It steps up the rate of vibration of the mind as no other emotion can, and causes the imaginative faculties of the brain to function at the level of genius. Far from being something of which one should be ashamed, a highly sexed nature is a blessing of which one should feel proud and for which no apologies should be offered. One thing I want to note here, if it is, just sexed as in sexual, I've recently come across a specific book that is highly focused on a spiritual connection with, your partner, and in fact, like almost, um, a blessed partnership, right? So not just like, if there's no full agreement, like we're partners, we're gonna have sex and we're gonna have partners, whatever happens, and we are with each other together, understanding each other. If it's not that, then it shouldn't really be done karmically. And I hope you understand what I'm putting down. But that's just a book that I recently received, that I was connecting with that topic. I was like, I see where they're getting at, as opposed to just like unresponsibly without, or with several partners, not being in understanding where the partnership lies at all. So it's just good to be, respectful of others, especially, once we get into this very creative energy. And that's what I'll say at the very basic form of this, because it looks like the next two chapters also have that term. The next chapter of this lesson, which I consider the greatest chapter of the Mastermind. Sex as a source of genius. To be highly sexed is not sufficient of itself to produce a genius. Only those who understand the nature of the sexual urge and who know how to transmute this powerful emotion into other channels of action than that of sexual contact rise to the status of a genius. The sexual energy is a driving force, compared with which all other motivating forces must take second place at best. A mind that has been aroused through intense sexual desire becomes receptive to the impulses of ideas that flash into the mind from outside sources. This is what is ordinarily known as inspiration. It is the belief of this author, a belief with considerable evidence to back it, that all so called revelations of whatever nature, from religion to art, are induced by an intense desire for sexual contact. All so called magnetic people are highly sexed. People who are brilliant, charming, versatile, and accomplished are generally highly sexed. Prove this for yourself by analyzing those whom you know to be highly sexed. Destroy the capacity for strong sexual desire, and you have removed all that is powerful about a human being. If you wish proof of this, observe what happens to the spirited stallion or any other male animal, such as a bull or a hog, after it has been altered sexually. The moment sexual urge has been destroyed in any animal, all right, talking about castration, right? From man on down to the lowest forms of animal life, the capacity for dominating action goes with it. This is a statement of biological fact too well known to be disputed. Moreover, it is a significant and important fact. The therapeutic value of sex. It is a fact well known to scientists, although not generally known to the layman, that sexual desire has a therapeutic value not attributed to any other human emotion. This fact may be easily verified, however, by even the most casual study of um, the subject, by observing the physical state of the body following sexual contact between two people who have an affinity and are properly mated. The physical body becomes relaxed and calm. Relaxation, superinduced in this manner, provides the nervous system with a favorable opportunity to balance and distribute the nervous energy of the body to all the organs. Properly distributed nervous energy is the force that maintains a healthy body. Also, nervous energy properly distributed through relaxation eliminates the cause of physical ailments. I think when they say nervous, they mean like through the nerves, the energy moving through the nerves. And yeah, just 1930s vocabulary might be slightly different, or 20s might be slightly different than 2020s. It's 100 years there, ain't it? These briefly stated facts are not merely the author's opinion; they have been gleaned from many decades of careful research collaboration of some of the most eminent scientists known to the past and present generations. One was a well known physician who was bold enough to admit that he had often recommended a change in sexual partners for patients who were suffering from hypochondria, which had the desired effect, one that he feels would not have been possible through any other prescription. This physician went even farther by predicting that the time was not far distant when this form of therapy would be more generally understood and used. The suggestion is here offered for what it may be worth, without comment from the author of this philosophy, other than the statement that most of the human race is still woefully ignorant of the possibilities of sexual desire and activity, not only in connection with the maintenance of health, but also in connection with the creation of genius. The significance of that fact impressed me when I made the discovery that practically every great leader whom I studied at close range was largely inspired by a powerful sexual connection. In the case of some influential men, the partner is a wife of whom the public hears but little. In a few cases, the source of inspiration has been traced to the other woman. In either case, a great enduring love is a sufficient motive to drive even a mediocre person to unbelievable heights of achievement, a statement of fact that should be kept in mind by all such spouses, partners, and lovers. Sexual desire, then, the stuff of songs and dreams, is the most effective known way to energize a mind to the level of mastermind. Complete harmony, remember. 10 reasons why the mind moves to greatness. A mind stimulant is any influence that will temporarily or permanently step up the rate of vibration of the brain. All great achievements are the result of one form or another of such stimuli. People are often surprised by learning what some of these stimuli are. Here, these mind movers are listed in order of what the author considers to be their importance. 1. Sexual contact between two people who are motivated by a genuine feeling of love. Makes sense? 2. Love, not necessarily accompanied by sexual contact. 3. A burning desire for fame, power, and financial gain. 4. To a highly emotional person, music is a mighty stimulant. 5. Friendship between either those of the same sex or the opposite sex, provided it is accompanied by a desire to be mutually helpful in making progress with some definite undertaking or calling. 6. A mastermind alliance between two or more people who ally themselves mentally for the purpose of mutual help in a spirit of unselfishness. 7. Mutual suffering, such as that experienced by people who are unjustly persecuted through racial, religious, and economic differences of opinion. 8. Autosuggestion. An individual may step up his or her own mind through constant self-suggestion, backed by a definite motive. Perhaps this source of mind stimulation should have been placed near the top of the list. 9. Suggestion. The influence of outside suggestion may lift one to great heights of achievement. If negatively used, it can dash one to the bottomless pit of failure and destruction. I'll read that one more time. Number 9. Suggestion. The influence of outside suggestion may lift one to great heights of achievement. If negatively used, it can dash one to the bottomless pit of failure and destruction. 10. Narcotics and alcohol. Although these are known to be sources of mind stimulation, their effects are totally destructive, leading finally to negation of all the other 9 sources of stimulation. With this, I would say, with that number 8, autosuggestion, an individual may step up his or her own mind through constant self-suggestion backed by a definite motive. Perhaps this source of mind stimulation should have been placed nearer to the top of the list. That was noted the way that I believe the editor, Patricia Duran, probably made that note. And then narcotics and alcohol, that is a mind stimulation. And that's number 10. They say totally destructive. I believe, it makes sense if you're doing something that is not entirely of your, whole free will, and freely in the whole will, then to some level it is destructive. And I think if you are not consciously doing anything that, with conscious intention and things like that, like, alcohol, once you're a few drinks in, how conscious can you be? Nothing against it. Like I've experienced all sorts of it. I'm just saying it's number 10 and it says fully destructive. I can see benefits, to some people that do it, because I know there are successful people that use it, and then they karmically are adjusting themselves in other ways, give in a lot of other ways, help their health in a whole lot of other ways. But yeah, definitely number 1 and 2, sexual contact between two people who are motivated by a genuine feeling of love, right? And love not necessarily accompanied by sexual contact, like most of these other ones. Autosuggestion, probably somewhere up the top, to be fair, because I feel autosuggestion, when you use it in like a Vedic way, or you use your creative energies, or you're trying to wholly be in all that energy, then it is very, creative. Here we have a brief description of all the major sources of mind stimulation. Through these sources of stimulation, one may partake of the stuff of genius by communing temporarily with infinite intelligence. Take or leave that plain and simple statement just as you please. The statement is made as a positive fact because this author has had the privilege of helping to raise scores of mediocre men and women out of the mediocrity into states of mind that place them squarely in the category of genius. Some have been able to remain in this exalted state, while others have relapsed to their former mediocre status, either temporarily or permanently. The author personally interviewed and analyzed an average of a dozen men and women every day for the purpose of helping them discover the most suitable source of mind stimulation and the most profitable outlet for the talent they displayed through moving their minds in these ways. On many scores of occasions, the author had the experience of seeing a client create some useful invention or some unique plan of rendering useful service right in the midst of the analysis. There you go. Like right now, pause it if you got a good idea. Start writing and just free stream of consciousness, what's coming to mind, or record, but recording, unless you got an auto transcription thing, it will take longer to have it later, right? Than immediate idea. So if you have a good idea, write it. Pause here, right? So we're going. Perhaps these analyses also produced an inadvertent mastermind side effect. One such story out of many took place when a client named Gundlach came to see me with his wife. Not 30 minutes into the analysis, he conceived an idea for a new style of interlocking brick suitable for building public highways, an idea that contained the clear possibility of rendering useful service all over America, to say nothing of making a huge fortune for himself. Perhaps it would be more correct to say that the three of us, he and his wife and I, conceived the idea simultaneously. Intemperance and addiction move the mind to failure. No question mark there, but it says impertinence and addiction move the mind to failure. Of the 10 stimulations described in this chapter, only 9 are safe for use, and even these cannot be used excessively. The intemperate use of alcohol and narcotics as mind stimulants is condemned without exception, on the ground that such use eventually destroys the normal functioning power of the brain. While it is true that some of the greatest literary geniuses of the past used liquor as a mind stimulant, albeit with temporary success, it is equally true that such use generally became an excess that destroyed them. Two writers of the past who are considered classics, Edgar Allan Poe and Robert Burns, used alcohol as a mind stimulant with telling effects, but both were finally destroyed through excessive use of this form of stimulant. Sex is the most powerful of all the mind stimulants, but this too may be used to excess with just as damaging effects as the excessive use of alcohol or narcotics. Excessive eating may be just as damaging as any other form of excess, and in many thousands of cases, this form of indulgence destroys all possibility of great achievement. One of the 17 factors of the law of success is that of self-control. Later, when we reach that subject, we will expand on the idea that self-control is a balance wheel guarding the individual against excesses of every nature whatsoever. The 3 major excesses that are destroying people throughout the world today are excessive and addictive drinking and drugging, eating, and sexual behavior. One is just as fatal to success as either of the other 2, or 3 in this manner. Why most who succeed do so after 40. One prominent theory explaining why the majority of strivers don't reach success in their chosen work until the age of 40 points to the extraordinary amount of energy spent on sexual activity in the earlier years. The word dissipated is often used to describe this phenomenon, since such energy is scattered and spread thin. The average young male, to use him as an example, does not learn that the sexual urge can be useful in areas other than sexual contact itself until he has reached the age of 40 to 45 years. Up to this age, the life of the average male, in which classification the majority of all males may be properly placed, is just one long, continuous orgy of sexual intercourse through which all his finer and more powerful emotions are sown wildly to the four winds. This is not merely the opinion of this author, it is a statement of fact based upon careful analysis of over 20,000 people. Intelligent study and analysis of 20,000 people gives a very accurate cross-section classification of the entire human race. Between overeating and overindulgence in sexual contact, the average man has but little energy left for other uses until he has passed the age of 40. In altogether too many instances, men never gain mastery of themselves at all in these two areas of weakness. A sad statement of fact is the truth that the majority of men do not look upon overindulgence in eating and in sexual contact as being dangerous excesses that destroy their chances of success in life. There is no argument over the detrimental effects of excessive use of alcohol and narcotics, as everyone knows that such overindulgence is fatal to success. But not everyone knows that excesses in sexual contact and in eating can be just as ruinous. The desire for sexual contact is the strongest, most powerful, and most impelling of all human desires. It's for this very reason that it may be harnessed and transmuted into channels other than that of sexual contact in a manner that will raise one to great heights of genius. On the other hand, this powerful urge, if not controlled and so transmuted, may and often does lower man to the level of an ordinary beast. In closing this chapter, may the author not offer a word of reply to those who may feel that even the very brief reference here made to the subject of sex might be harmful to young men and women? The reply is this: ignorance of the subject of sex due to lack of free discussion of the subject by those who really understand it has resulted in destructive use of the sexual drive all through the ages. Moreover, if anyone should feel that this brief reference might hurt the morals of the young people of this generation, let that person keep in mind the fact that most young people get their sex education from less commendable sources than a book of this nature, and such education is generally accompanied by interpretations of the power of sex which in no way relate the subjects of sex and genius. These sources of sex information in no manner ever suggest that there is such a possibility as the transmutation of sex power into art and literary works of the most commendable order, as well as into business leadership and a multitude of other constructive forms of helpful service. This is an age of frank discussion of the great mysteries of life, among which the subject of sex may be properly classified. Finally, the urge of sex is biological in nature and it cannot be suppressed through silence. In truth, the emotion of sexual urge is the finest of all human emotions, and the sexual relationship the most beautiful of all relationships. Why then cast the slurring innuendo that the sexual relationship is something ugly and vulgar by trying to shroud the subject in a dark background of silence? This ends the subject of the mastermind. We pass next to the discussion of the second of the 17 factors of the law of success, with both apology and regret that this lack of space forbids us to discuss the remaining 16 subjects as extensively as we have covered the subject of the mastermind. Very good. What I'm receiving right there from there is that, kind of like I had mentioned earlier, I think in the intro, this book, I think he wrote after his initial teachings, and I think it's just going to keep getting more and more into it. And I believe he was basically in a huge mastermind of people in this lecture. So then he took this coursework and then he wrote it into this book, and it was his first real book. Also, I think this is maybe the most important of his books because it's his first one, because it's the most raw to his initial intention, which was mentioned at the beginning and then is stated at the very end, that really all this is meant to do is to stimulate anytime. You're always working on something. If you know or you don't know, you are focused at a point of horizon of something you're working towards as a project, let's call it. But ultimately, it's your life and where you're trying to get to. And you're trying to get there in a more enjoyable, better, present, more aware, just grander manner, let's say. Grander, even more wholer and present and enjoyable and heartfelt, let's say. And good ideas might rush to mind. And you should take action with those ideas as bestly, I would say as quickly but as efficiently as possible. Not necessarily always quick, but as responsibly, respectfully, foundationally as possible. Like if you have other things, always try to be respectful of all of it, right? All of it, right? Um, Especially we were just talking about sex, it, look into the sexual energy and is abstinence, yeah, abstaining from. I hear it's beneficial, but also I think maybe you know, especially with that other book that I mentioned right at the beginning of talking about this and reading this, I think the focus is you should really try to be respectful with all the energy of the planet and earth and experience and universe, that you're going through in your present moment. This moment that you are gratifying and appreciating right now, even with just your senses, even if you're not, like wholly enjoying it. The point is to become aware in it and be as respectful as possible with all of it, with all your use of your creative energy. So it's nice, it's good to, use these laws of power that you might have heard about in the past, um, and these laws of success, in the most respectful manner. So just try to be open to hearing out the whole awareness of the other before you're forcefully objectifying with your own information. If that's the way, that's the way I said it. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down. and, well, the first time I heard that was funny. Um, with all that being said, take action on the good ideas that you came up with, that maybe you wrote or that you have in mind now, and maybe take action on them now. Because the thing is, if you don't take action on them now, they may leave you and not return until another time when it is already done, or when you could get to, doing it as well, but in a different light, and it might not be at the speed at which you want, which is why it is good to always start your day and end your day with good intention and understanding of true gratitude of where you are. And I'll end with that. I hope you have a good day. I'd love to hear your responses, read them, hear them as well, especially if they're good and not hateful. I apologize if, said anything here that we misunderstood each other on, but truly the point is always for you to get to a more good place in mind with what you are, working on. Peace.